Hello. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Talk Freelance to Me podcast. I am so thrilled today to introduce you to one of my favorite people, my favorite colleagues, just my favorite humans, Dianna Romaguera. Welcome to the show.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here.
I appreciate you so much. We go way back. And podcast fam, I need to tell you, this woman is good at everything. Like, she is the Swiss Army knife of marketing and communications and anything under that umbrella. She has a really stellar bio. I'm going to read a little bit to you so you can get acquainted with her. Dianna is a first-generation graduate of the University of South Florida, where she earned her BA in communications. With over 15 years of professional experience, Dianna has worked across the operational spectrum, including event marketing and production, project management, and integrated marketing communications. Both as an employee and a freelance consultant, she has a wide array of expertise in various industries and a passion for nonprofit organizations. Currently, Dianna works with nonprofit organizations to develop, implement, and measure strategic initiatives toward operational success, from developing a strategic plan to streamlining communications to allocating resources to meet the organization's goals, all while working with stakeholders, volunteers, and other consultants. Dianna is a proud mommy to a fierce 4-year-old and resides in New York. Dianna, you're amazing.
You made me sound like a ninja. I kind of like that.
You are a ninja. You are a ninja. You're flexible. You're adaptable. You have always been the example to me of a woman who can just be flexible and adaptable and really jump into any situation and get along with everybody. And more than that, like, have people eating out of your hand and they're just like charmed. And that's a gift. Not everybody has that.
Thank you. It's something you work towards, not something you're born with. So anybody can achieve that. It's just a lot of practice and really being really good at listening. What are people saying? What are they really saying? Right. And when we've met with clients in the past, they might want a brand new website, but really they need a branding adjustment, right? Or let's take a look behind the scenes, like what's really going on. So it's really an art of listening, I would say.
I think you're right. And I think that to fill you guys in, Freelance fam, we work together at the same marketing agency. So Dianna's my colleague. I've worked with her on a big nonprofit organization that we're part of for women. And then we've worked together, like, actually for client projects. And that is something, Dianna, that I feel like you've always been. When people say that, like, communication is 90% nonverbal, and what are they saying when they're really not speaking and reading between the lines? I mean, we can come from the same meeting and you'd be like, oh no, they want something different. And this person's good, and understanding also the dynamics, like when in your bio, when we were talking about, you're able to look at what the organization wants to achieve, but then all the players, all the stakeholders, the staff. Like, I know you've done a lot of nonprofit work with like boards and volunteers, and just, you really are great with people. And I think that's a skill that every industry needs, right?
Thank you. Yeah, it's applicable across the board. A doctor needs to be good with people. A construction worker needs to be good with people. It's a skill that I think everybody can fine tune along the way.
Definitely. And in this age of AI, so in the freelance world right now, freelance writers specifically, it's all about Chat GPT and AI, and these robots are taking our jobs and stuff. And what you mentioned, like being able to work with real people, Chat GPT can't do that yet. Maybe he will later. But right now, like, understanding what's being said that's not being spoken, man, that's something that I think even now is going to be even more of a competitive advantage now in this age of AI that we're in. So,
yeah, that's a really good point, because with Chat GPT and all the AI tools, you have to tell it what you want it to give you, but there's no translation, right? So it's very black and white. And so I think that's where, the beauty of freelancers and people that work in our space is you get to be the translator and say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but have you thought about this? And you get to bring in new ideas and insert some strategy and ask the right questions to kind of pull out the rest. So that's definitely something AI will probably get there. Hopefully not in our lifetime.
Exactly.
Maybe in our lifetime. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of it, right? It's transactional. It's a conversation. It's building on, it might be one ask, but after a conversation, it might be five. And that's a huge opportunity for a freelancer, right? You can find different kind of sub projects within the original ask.
Yes. And what you touched on before about sometimes clients will ask us, oh, I know I need a website. Or maybe they think they need something. Maybe it's because their competitors have something, whatever that is. Maybe they opened a TikTok account and they feel like, oh, now we got to keep up with the Joneses. And I think that's something that you've really done well that I've witnessed and learned from myself is your ability to kind of poke around, probe a little bit, and figure out what is that end point. Because, like you said, the vehicle may not be a new website or the vehicle may not be a new TikTok account. It might be something else, but they don't know that. They're trying. They don't know what we know. They don't know marketing and communications and advertising. They just know the phone's not ringing. I'm not getting, I need to get more sales or whatever that looks like.
Right. And they might have seen a billboard driving into work and they say, I need that too. Right. Okay. Well, is that really the best use of your dollars? Like, let's talk about it.
Exactly.
But no, you brought up a good point. It's also taking a step back, right? As a consultant, when you come in, they might be asking you for one thing. The follow-up question should be, well, what's your end goal? Right? If you're talking about social media, do you want more followers or do you want a return on your investment? You want clicks to turn into sales, right? So what is actually of value to you, client? And what do you want to see at the end? Do you want to see more book sales? Okay, so the strategy is going to look different. How we get there is different. The billboard's probably not going to help, right? Let's put that money into some social media advertising, for example. So really understanding what is their end goal and how kind of your project or your scope that you're being hired to do kind of fits into that. And it's okay to challenge. It's okay to suggest, right? At the end of the day, they're the paying customer, but it's also your expertise that they're coming to you for. And so I think sometimes as freelancers, you try to pigeonhole yourself. Like, I'm really good at this thing and I'm only working on social media, but your gut is telling you like, this is probably not going to give them the results that they need. You'll do it because the paycheck's there. But at the end of the day, you have to be true to, the art of what your skill is I want to convert for you on social media, but this is not the right platform for you for what you're trying to achieve. And so that's also goes to understanding the client and what is the goal, the real goal.
The real goal. Freelance fam, I hope you're listening to these gems being dropped because that is some premium level thinking and advice. And it's hard to put into practice sometimes when you're working in the freelance life and there's feast or famine. There's, you don't know when your next project is going to come. And so maybe you don't want to speak up and say, you don't need social media at all. Like you have a fundamental business issue with your logistics that you need to work out first. So I think that's golden, that advice that you just shared. Thank you for that. So you have done so many things from event marketing to nonprofit management. You've done activations, you've done sales, and you've done a ton of different things in your career as a W-2 employee. And then nearly 8 years ago, you decided, I'm going to go out on my own as a strategic communications consultant. So tell us more about your experience in taking that leap toward the freelance life and what you're doing today as an independent practitioner.
It was scary and it's not fair to sugarcoat it for anyone. It is definitely a leap of faith. And I think at that time, I knew I had the skills. I had the tool bag, right? I was ready. I had my tool belt on, but I was nervous. And, I think it's normal to fear rejection, fear, that imposter syndrome. Like, am I worthy of this? Are people actually going to pay to hear what I have to say on my own, right? Because, when you're in an agency setting or on a team, the strength is in your team. And so I really used that team mentality and I started surrounding myself with people who've done it before, who I can ask questions or, hey, what tools do you use to manage your books, right? Like starting from scratch. And I think for anybody considering, right, it's okay to ask for help because I think freelancers by nature, it's like, I'm going to do everything on my own because I've always wanted to work for myself. You still work for yourself, but you still have to surround yourself with the right people. And that support system is really important. Family, friends, people you don't really know, just pick up the phone or DM them like, hey, I see you're doing this. Do you have 5 minutes? I'd love to learn how you got there. And so having those conversations, that's really putting yourself out there. But that's how you learn. And you can Google things all day long, but a conversation goes a long way. And so that's kind of how I transitioned. I knew I needed a team. I had some former freelancers that I had worked with, and we kind of banded together and, okay, let's have a go at it. And let's grab some clients and friends that we know that need some work and let's give it a try. And it worked, which is great. And freelancers come and go, and that's okay too. Everybody's free, right? So come and go. And we've got a good Rolodex of folks that we can tap into for different projects, which is always golden. And yeah, just continue to build on those relationships. One of those actually ended up being a very long-term client since the beginning. We're still together. We're practically married at this point. But it's great. It's proof. And, we started out with one very specific task and it turned into a more long-term monthly retainer consultant opportunity for me, along with continuing to dabble in different projects here and there with different clients. But it's building the right team, getting yourself surrounded with the right people, finding the right tools that work for you. Just because a blogger says, don't use Zoom to record, for example, that might not be what's best for you, right? So it's trial and error, and also have grace with yourself. It's a leap of faith for you, for your family. A lot of times, moms, this is where we land. It feels good. It's flexible. There's still long hours, right? After everybody's asleep, you log in and you start typing away. And that's okay, because the trade-off is, in my opinion, totally worth it.
I agree. I agree. And thank you so much for keeping it real. I mean, I think it's so refreshing because you look at this like you see on social media, be a boss, babe. I'm a girl boss, and fire your boss today and work for yourself. And, entrepreneurship is amazing. It can be amazing. It is freeing, but it's a lot of hard work. And nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the highs and the lows, the disappointments, the scary times. And, there is that trade off. Like, just because you are not reporting to someone every day, or maybe your hours are not 8 to 5 and you have to go somewhere, that doesn't mean you're not working. You're still working. You might even be working more than you've ever worked before because you're doing everything. But I agree with you. I think the trade-offs, that freedom, that autonomy over our own schedule, to me, that's what makes it worth it too.
Oh, absolutely. And you said something, the fire your boss mentality.
That's one of my favorites, actually.
I have to say, while I agree, and sometimes you go there mentally, when you're in the freelance space, you can't afford to burn bridges. You might not agree. You might leave on not so great terms, right? The project's over and it just didn't feel great, but don't burn that bridge because you never know where it's going to take you. They might be asked for a referral and you still want to be on that list, on that referral list. You never know where work is going to come from. And that's one thing that I learned early on. You don't need to be best friends with everyone. A good, solid, professional working relationship goes a long way. And I mean, I've gotten calls from people I haven't talked to in 10 years. Hey, do you still do that thing? We have a project. I'm at this big corporate, blah, blah, blah. And we just need somebody to work on this one thing. So I know people want to flip the table, Jerry Maguire out, but it can never be that bad. If your goal is to go freelance, or you might need a recommendation for another corporate job, it's not worth burning the bridges. It's really not.
Woo! Talk about another hard thing.
It's hard.
Another hard thing when you're in that moment and you're just like, the emotions are running high. It can be hard to be level headed and to think about the future, but you're right. And I would say, like, even though we don't have a boss when we are working in a freelance capacity, we have bosses. Every client's our boss. Like, they're waiting for status updates. We have to have check-in meetings with them. We have to deliver. We have to make edits or change requests, perform those for them based on what they're asking for. So we're still accountable to somebody if we want to get paid. So yeah, the whole like fire your boss, I don't have to listen to anybody is kind of comical to me, really.
It's good in theory.
It is. It is good in theory. It's part of the marketing, I guess, to get more people to do it.
Yes.
So you've so many companies talking about like entrepreneurship and people who go out on their own. So many companies die out at like year 2 or even less. But you've been doing this for a while and you've grown and you're thriving. So what have been your secrets to your staying power in entrepreneurship?
I think we touched on it a little bit at the beginning. I would say becoming a really great listener and also giving yourself the space to be flexible while you might be really good at one thing. There's a school of thought that says be a master of your craft. And then there's a school of thought that says jack of all trades, master of none, right? So there's a balance there. But I think if the relationship is there, build on that, stay in their good graces, right? And I'm not saying, if you are not a graphic designer to all of a sudden start doing graphic design, but maybe you can be a consultant on that project, or maybe you can offer recommendation and bring somebody in. And then you become the copy editor if you're a writer, for example, for that project. So, I think that's something that I learned early on is those relationships matter. And while it's very easy to be the waitress, take the order, complete the order, you got your dinner and I'm gone, I stick around. I stick around. Oh, you guys are working on a strategic plan for next year. I'd love to listen in on that if you don't mind. Let me listen. Oh, it sounds like there's going to be a new project coming up. Here's my thoughts. And sometimes, yes, it feels, you're giving things away for free, quote unquote, but it's really expanding your capability in their eyes and continuing to build that relationship and trust. And I think if you've already kind of checked off one order, they're more likely to listen to your insights and you're already in the know with what that client wants, needs, where they're going. You might probably already have had conversations with key stakeholders, right? So it doesn't work for all clients because there are one and dones for sure. But I think, again, the relationship part is huge and trying to nurture that as much as possible, keep you in the game longer.
That's golden. And I just spoke to Lindsay. She's going to have a podcast episode as well. And so she works in AEC marketing, architecture, engineering, and construction groups. And so she's internal. And I was asking her, what do you look for in freelancers and in consultants to bring in? And she said just what you said. She was saying, I look for people who are going to consult me, guide me, have a process. Don't make me think about it. Don't make me think about how this relationship's going to work. Tell me how this works. Give me ideas, be value add. So I think that really is a big distinction in what you said, the waitress versus the consultant, like being able to be part of the team and to keep showcasing that you're in it with them, that you want them to succeed. That's so good. So good, Dianna.
And do your homework along the way, right?
Yeah.
If it's an attorney who hired you and you know nothing about it, right? Like you mentioned in your first episode, law was not in your language, right?
Right.
But do your homework. If you really want it and they hired you for one thing and you blow it out of the water and you're able to have a conversation because you listened to 3 podcasts about hearing attorneys speak, but now you're in the lingo, chances are they're going to say, hey, you know what? Let's call her back. We've got some more work, right? So yes, it's free time. You're not getting paid to do the research, but it goes a long way.
I love it.
Right? So take it an extra step. It goes far.
So good. So good. So you were talking about not burning bridges, talking about doing your homework. Are there other big lessons, even hard lessons that you've learned from running your own business that you can share with the audience?
Never delay on sending an invoice.
Ain't that the truth?
It sounds so practical, but when you're running things on your own, sometimes those administrative things are difficult. You kind of leave it for like, oh, I'll do it later. You never want to have to be in a position where you're calling someone to remind them to pay you, right? Just automate it, find the right tool, automate it, set it and forget it, right? I would say some hard lessons. Friends can't always be coworkers.
Woo! We could close out. The show's over, people.
This should be a separate episode.
No, we have to do a series on that.
And I've tried to make that round peg fit in a square hole so many times before. And also because of my nature, I want to help people like, oh, you're out of a job right now. Listen, I've got this thing I need help with. It doesn't always work. And so I think just separating that, it happens sometimes and it's magical. Like we got a chance to work together. We were friends before, we were friends after, and we still work together. So it doesn't always work, but I think looking at people for their skill set first and not because, oh, that was my homegirl in senior year, like we hung out, that doesn't equal they're going to be a great person on your team or for a specific project. So I would say that's a pretty big lesson. And yeah, I think never stop learning. I know there seems to be a phase or there's a ton of certificates available on LinkedIn and, free sign up for this and, learn something new. I think every opportunity that comes into your inbox, take it, especially if it's a freebie, if it's case study to read up on somebody who's doing something similar to you, follow them, listen to their stuff and learn. I think that's one way freelancers, stay relevant You don't need to know everything about law, back to our law example, but maybe you need to, learn some strategies for social media, for example, that attorneys are using that have worked, and you put that in your tool belt, right? So never stop learning.
So good. So good. And that's how we beat the robots. Their stuff is based on machine learning. Well, we got a machine learner right here. We can use our brain. You can keep getting that information. I love that. That's so refreshing. Sometimes it's easy to want to get comfortable, get complacent, and just kind of like rest on our laurels. And we can't. We will get left behind if we don't embrace these new changes and new information that's coming out. Awesome. So if someone were to see your client roster and everything you've done, they would be so amazed. The events, like you did the US Open. You've worked for brands like Heineken, which is a household name. You've done digital marketing. Then you're doing this cool thing with this board governance where you're working with nonprofits and boards. And that's a whole other animal than, for-profit companies. It's really unique. So tell us more about this diversity. Is this on purpose? How have you kept things balanced and even fun?
That is a great question. I think by nature, I started my professional career in a very agency setting. So it was do one thing really well and apply it to different clients as they come in. And so I think that forced me to be very nimble, right? In the small talk, like, hey, how's it going? Ask the right questions, process. But my skill set bag hasn't really changed. It's just evolved, right? So I think to sum it all up, I would say it's really project management at its core and taking those key fundamental processes and steps and applying it to different arenas, right? And I started out with events. It was a good old time. I traveled the country. I was home maybe 1 week out of the month. Like it was intense. It was fun. It was great when you're 22, but it taught me a lot about dealing with people on the fly, in and out of different cities all the time. But again, the skill set remained the same. The process was the same, getting from A to Z, understanding the goals, the strategy, and meeting client expectations. I think those things are still at the core. And the same applies today with, working with different boards and governance. And there you're managing 12, 15 people on a board and everyone's got their opinions. But at the end of the day, it's what is the organization's goal and how can I help structure that communication strategy? Where are we spending dollars for advertising? But it still all funnels into the same thought process, right? It's a project. Let's break it up into pieces and we're still trying to get to the same end goal. So I guess it looks probably crazy on paper, but I would wrap it up in that way and say it still follows a very methodical process. And because there is a methodical process to like a PMP certification, for example, it leaves room for creativity. So that's where it gets fun, right? We're still getting to the end result, but let's find new ways to do it. And that's where your research and your skill set and phone a friend, right? What do you got going on? Oh, let's collaborate, right? That's another piece we haven't touched on. Maybe there's some synergy there. Let's work on this together. Let's pull some ideas. You're still getting to the end goal, but the creativity for me is where it stays fun, it stays spicy.
I love that. And I've never heard that before, or that idea that getting the project management piece running and dedicating the time commitment to that, to creating a project management, like a timeline, a tracker, and getting that smooth creates the space for creativity because everything's running and you're not functioning from this like frantic, like, wait, what's happening? It makes sense. It totally makes sense. And I've never think about it that project management is like analytical and maybe uses the other side of your brain, but it's interesting how they work together. I love that. So you touched on that, working with people. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, whether it's people in a for-profit company or nonprofit, whatever industry. And I've never seen anybody do it as well as you, getting everybody to sing on the same sheet of music, from the choir director to the most expert people on the board or the committee or in the boardroom, and even the newbies, like from folks who are the Gen Zers to the boomers. I mean, you've got everybody just loving you and in synergy. Tell me more about Dee's secret sauce. What's your approach to understanding people, managing people, even influencing people, from the clients to the team members to the employees and all in between?
Oof. It goes back to being a great listener. I feel like I'm talking to my daughter. Let's be a good listener today.
It's so hard.
But it's true.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard. And I think, pretty sure there was a talk on, are you listening to understand? Or are you listening, preparing to respond? Right. So, but I would take it one step further and is, are you listening to respond with the right follow-up question? And that goes back to, you're telling me you want X, but your tone, what you're trying to say between the words is leading me this way. And I think when it comes to, managing a group of people, volunteer, paid, managing up, right? If they're your superiors or managing down, everyone has their own motivation for being great. It could be there for the bonus. They want to be recognized for their work. They want to have an opportunity to move up or get tapped for a special project, right? And they feel like that's their validation. And so I think you have to learn people very quickly to say, okay, their motivation is they want to be recognized for their work. So let's put them in a position on this project and allow them to flourish in that way. It's a little bit of development, right? If you're overseeing people, obviously, but when you're managing up or you have stakeholders that you're trying to bring into a project, there's no such thing as over communicating. Say it and repeat it and repeat it, and always bring everything back to what is the strategic value of what we're doing? What is the mission of the organization? Are we answering to our customers? Are we answering to our members, like their actual needs? Because a lot of times, ego gets in the way.
Oh my gosh. Another episode.
And a business owner might say, I need that billboard to sell more of my products. But really, what your clients are saying is they want like a phase B of that product. They want you to develop something new. So, really, again, asking the right questions, but bring it back to what is the why of what we're doing, not the personal why, but what's the best thing for the organization or for the business. And really kind of that usually resets the thought process in the room or in the discussion and allows everyone to take a step back. Okay, let's ask that question again. Is what we're doing here today really driving the business, turning sales, whatever the goal is? And it usually checks everyone to fall in line with, let's focus on the bigger mission here. So there's no, I guess, cookie cutter answer. It really depends on the situation, but it all boils down to being a great listener and always bring it back to the why. Always bring it back to what is the end result that we're trying to achieve together as a group, as an organization, and driving towards that.
I love that. You talked about collaboration a little while ago, and I think it really all kind of connects because that's the other thing that I think is one of your superpowers is you're an idea person, but you're really great about working and collaborating with other people to make your ideas come to life or even to spark new ideas that are super innovative, that are totally miles from the box. They're so outside of the box. Can you talk more about your approach to collaboration and how that's worked for you in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that you can't always think that you're the smartest one in the room because you're probably not, and that's okay. Own it, but the smartest people in the room.
Right.
And that's the real power, right? It's being resourceful. Also, checking your own ego and owning that I can look at graphic design and give my 2 cents. Like, I think that's good. Maybe we can tweak this, but I'm not a graphic designer. So, understanding what your skill set is and what your forte is and reaching out to folks who have that expertise. And again, it's a humility exercise, right? To say, I don't know, but I want to know. And that really positions you as that's your superpower is understanding what those resources are. Don't burn the bridges because those bridges are probably on that call list. But that really leads to some really great collaborative opportunities and pulling people in for different projects. That's where the magic happens, really.
I love that. You are so experienced and you're so wise in this whole world of people and business and how it all works together. I really appreciate those gems. So, in addition to all this amazing work that you do for these clients, you're also a mommy and to a little girl, 4-year-old daughter. So, can you give tips for other moms who want to venture into entrepreneurship, but they're concerned about how they're going to manage the work in the early years while being a mom?
I was going to say, where are the gems for for 4-year-olds? How do I manage a 4-year-old?
It's hard. Yes.
Ooh, it is a lot, but I will say the freelance life, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, especially now that I'm a mom. It is like, sure, sometimes it's like, I wonder what it would be like. But no, I religiously, mark things off on my calendar. I am not available for blocks of time for calls. I mean, I'm just completely shut down. Google Calendar is my best friend, and it's all color coordinated very beautifully. And I'm able to pick her up from school. I take her to school in the morning. We have family time. We eat dinner together. So it's doable. You do have to be very disciplined. It's very easy to say, oh, let me just get this email done really quick. And, the kid's like, "Mah, mah, mah, mah," right? Like it's normal. They want to play too. I want to play.
Yes.
So, and we talked about it earlier too, also making sure that your freelance life decision is one that's made with your family in mind. So my partner and I have a very clear understanding. There's some nights we have dinner and I have to plug in, like it's a block of time that I need to do. So it is not just a decision that you make on your own. It's definitely a family unit decision. Everybody's on board. But then it's great because then there's days where it's like, we're going to play hooky today and we're going to go fly a kite on a Wednesday. And that's okay because we planned for it. So it's, again, over communicating it with your family unit and also setting those boundaries and expectations up front when you do have a new client, when there's an onboarding conversation. Listen, I check emails 3 days a week. There's a fire, let's talk on Monday morning. I don't pick up my phone on Saturdays. So having very clear boundaries and expectations. And that's something I'm still trying to master because I'm notorious for Sunday night. Let me just get a head start on the week. And, you fall into the trap. So just have grace with yourself and what works best for you. And there is no correct freelance schedule. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but it's definitely doable with a family. I think it's more conducive to having a healthy family life.
I think so too. And those boundaries, man, I don't know about you, but for me, I still struggle with it. And I don't know if it's a function of, I feel like our generation was deeply entrenched in hustle culture. Like we took pride in saying, oh, I only slept 3 hours last night, or text me anytime, client. That's how we showcased our appreciation and our commitment to the project, our loyalty, our attentiveness, responsiveness. And it's so refreshing now to see more people say that that's okay, that boundaries are all right, that is it truly an emergency if, this email needs a new graphic or something? Can it wait till Monday? And I still struggle with it. I still struggle with it a lot. Is that something that's been hard for you to kind of unlearn some of that? I feel like it was the expectation to always be on just 10 years ago.
For sure. I just had this conversation in the last 3 days. And I said, it's almost like a cultural shift in that busy is not good.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Right? Like I delayed having a conversation with a very dear friend of mine for months because I was so busy. And then I felt terrible, right? Like they were going through something, they wanted to talk it out. And it was a reflection moment. I was like, this busy culture is not it. It's not it. And it is a hustle mentality, but you can still be about your hustle with boundaries. And priorities change, right? Maybe when we were in our 20s, we had the free time to dedicate to that. But today, I think my priorities are different. Am I maybe losing money? Maybe. I think it also pushes you to get creative with how you manage your time. It's a different mentality. The busy culture is scary. And I think it might be a sign of our time. It could be cultural. First generation, we have something more to prove. We're going to get that job over somebody else. So that extra lucha, but yes, we're still doing that. That fight is not gone, but it's also respecting your time and your time to process. And mental health is very important and real. And even when we were all locked up with the pandemic, I probably worked more than I should have. I couldn't go outside and play. I couldn't fly that kite.
Absolutely.
So it's also, we might have trained ourselves before COVID and then we had to like fall back into it. And then now it's like, okay, let's backtrack again. Let's go back to the very clear boundaries. I think it's a constant struggle. And as women, I think we also have this mentality of we have to do it all. We have to be superwomen. We have to be mom of the year and PTA, and we're doing it all. And I recently saw this blogger talk about it's not real. I think it was an interview with Shonda Rhimes. I think she was giving a commencement speech, and she said, if I'm excelling here, it means I'm missing out over here. She's like, if I'm winning an award, I'm probably missing my daughter's recital. So there is always a trade-off. You have to just make the decision that's best for you and your family at that time. But it's unfair for the perception we're supposed to be able to do it all because you set yourself up and those expectations are not realistic at all.
It's so true. It's so, so true. So everybody, you have the permission to set the boundaries. Here's your permission to not do it all because you can't. Like, just go ahead and hang up that idea. We have to choose because, the amount of opportunities that are coming our way, things that we're curious about, things we're interested in, to me, that is infinite, right? But our time is not infinite. Our time is the most finite, most precious resource we have. Like, we can always go try to get more money, borrow money, make some money. But this time, it's gone. It's gone. That day is gone. We're never going to get it back. So, yeah, it's a lot. But I'm glad that you are being one of the many that's saying no. Here's my work time. Here's my mom time. Here's my me time. It's important.
Yeah, let's start that rumor.
I know. Exactly.
How do we get that to go viral?
I know. We need a billboard.
We need a billboard. That's right.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. So what's next for you? Where do you want to take your company in the future? What's your dream? What's next for Dianna?
I'm in the process of figuring that out. I think I've definitely evolved to focus more on strategy, less random events, even though I love it, really working on building the long-term clients. And I don't know, I'm happy with the I don't know right now. I'm kind of riding the wave. And, all these, what was it? Mercury in retrograde again.
Yeah, exactly.
All these moments for self-reflection. But yeah, no, I think this year I definitely just kind of taking a step back and really taking in what I do have. Because I think sometimes as freelancers, you're always chasing like, oh, what if I go for that? Oh, there's an RFP. Oh, let's do this. Hey, let's call this person, and trying to not do that and just let's see what the universe is churning right now. And, it's been a very interesting couple of months taking that approach. I'm getting antsy because, you want to but hopefully this summer, I think there might be something new cooking. And yeah.
That's so exciting. So I know folks are going to be so inspired by this episode and all of the wisdom that you shared with us. Where can people find you online if they want to connect?
Email is the best place.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, dromaguera@gmail.com, and we can talk freelance.
Yay! Thank you so much, Dianna, for talking freelance with us today. We really appreciate your time being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And with that, we've come to the end of another episode. Please make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so, and give me a 5-star review on Apple. This will help out a lot in getting the word out about this brand new podcast. I invite you to check out the show notes and also grab my free Niches Get Riches freelance writing worksheet to brainstorm the best niches for your writing business. If you're not a writer, you can still use it to get business ideas. And until next time, this is Ashley at Talk Freelance to Me. Don't forget, we all get this one precious life. Don't constrain yourself to a box that you were never meant to fit in. It is your right to profit from your own creative gifts. This podcast was created by Ashley Cisneros Mejia. Our music was composed by Donna Raphael of World Instrumentals. Talk Freelance to Me is a product of Phoenix Creative Studio.